The rain hammered against Marcus's windshield like 1,000 tiny fists as he navigated the dark country road, his daughter's soft breathing. From the back seat, the only sound, keeping him company. It was past midnight, and all he wanted was to get 7-year-old Emma home and tucked into bed. But then his headlights caught something that made his heart stop, a figure in white, stumbling along the shoulder of the road, soaked to the bone and clearly in distress. Every instinct screamed at him to keep driving. He was a single father with a sleeping child, after all. But Marcus had been raised to help those in need, consequences be damned. He pulled over. The woman who approached his passenger window looked like she'd walked out of a fairy, tail gone horribly wrong. Her once elegant wedding dress was torn at the hem, caked with mud, and her elaborate updo had collapsed into wet tangles around her shoulders. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, though Marcus couldn't tell if it was from tears or rain. She was shivering violently. "Please!" she gasped when he rolled down the window. "I need help. My phone's dead and I need to get away from here." Marcus glanced back at Emma, still peacefully asleep in her booster seat, then at this stranger who looked utterly desperate. He'd heard all the warnings about picking up hitchhikers, especially at night. But looking into this woman's terrified eyes, he saw something achingly familiar, the same vulnerability he'd seen in his own reflection. 3 years ago, when his wife walked out, leaving him to raise their daughter alone, the look of someone whose world had just shattered. "Get in," he said, unlocking the door. "There's a blanket in the back seat." "You're freezing." The woman practically collapsed into the passenger seat, wrapping herself in the worn fleece blanket Emma used for road trips. She was trembling so hard her teeth chattered. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much. I'm Victoria." "Marcus. That's my daughter Emma in the back." He put the car in drive. Windshield wipers working overtime. "There's a diner about 20 miles up the road. It's the only thing open at this hour. We can get you warm and you can call someone." Victoria nodded, pulling the blanket tighter. For several miles, they drove in silence except for the rhythm of the rain. Marcus kept stealing glances at her, wondering what could have happened. A runaway bride was the obvious answer. But from what? Who abandons their wedding in the middle of nowhere at midnight? "I was supposed to get married today," Victoria finally said, as if reading his thoughts. Her voice was hollow. "To a man I've known for 2 years. Preston Ashworth. Maybe you've heard of him?" Marcus shook his head. The name meant nothing to him. Victoria laughed bitterly. "Right, why would you? You're probably one of the few genuine people left in this world." She stared out at the darkness. "Preston was my fiancé. He comes from old money, my father's business partner. The merger of 2 fortunes, they called it. A dynasty in the making." "That doesn't sound like love," Marcus said quietly. "It wasn't," Victoria's voice cracked. "But my father has been grooming me my whole life to marry well, to expand the family empire. Victoria Hartwell, daughter of billionaire real estate mogul Richard Hartwell. Doing her duty." She laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "I told myself I could learn to love Preston. That companionship and shared goals were enough. But tonight, an hour before the ceremony, I overheard him on the phone with someone. He was laughing about how marrying me would finally give him access to my family's company, how I was gullible and manageable, how this was purely business and he'd keep his real life and his mistresses separate." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "I'm sorry. I just ran. Out the back of the venue, still in my dress, grabbed my clutch, and started walking. I didn't even know where I was going. My father's security team came after me, but I managed to lose them in the woods. I've been walking for hours." She turned to look at him, really look at him. "You have no idea what you've done stopping for me. They would have found me eventually. Dragged me back. Convinced me it was cold feet and hysteria. And I probably would have believed them because that's what I've always done." The diner's neon sign appeared through the rain like a beacon. Marcus pulled into the nearly empty parking lot and glanced back to check on Emma. Still, sleeping soundly, thank God. He'd carry her in if needed, but she looked so peaceful. "Come on," he said to Victoria. "Let's get you something hot to drink." Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh after the darkness of the road. The sole waitress, a woman in her 60s named Dolores according to her name tag, barely blinked at Victoria's bedraggled appearance. In a place like this, she'd probably seen stranger things. They slid into a corner booth, and Marcus ordered coffee for both of them. Victoria wrapped her hands around the mug when it arrived, like she was trying to absorb its warmth into her very soul. "I have money," she said suddenly. "A lot of it. I can pay you." "For helping me, for—" "I don't want your money," Marcus interrupted gently. "I stopped because you needed help. That's it." Victoria stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "People always want something." "Some people do," he acknowledged. "But not everyone. When Emma's mom left us, I was drowning. Couldn't afford childcare, couldn't take time off work without losing my job. A neighbor I barely knew, Mrs. Chen, started watching Emma for free. Wouldn't take a dime. She said, 'You help people because you can, not because there's something in it for you.' She saved us." Tears welled up in Victoria's eyes, real tears this time, not rain or mascara. "I don't know what to do. If I go back, my father will never let me leave again. He'll convince Preston to smooth things over. I'll be trapped in a life that isn't mine." Marcus thought about his own life, the tiny two-bedroom apartment, the struggling construction business, the constant juggling of bills and child care. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. It was real. "What do you want?" he asked. "If you could do anything, be anyone, what would you choose?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I studied art history in college, before my father decided that was frivolous and redirected me to business school. There's a small gallery in Portland that offered me a curator position. 5 years ago, I turned it down because it wasn't prestigious enough, didn't pay enough. But I think about it sometimes, about what my life could have been. So go to Portland." "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" Marcus leaned forward. "You already ran. The hard part's done. Now you just keep running, but toward something instead of away from it." A small, genuine smile flickered across Victoria's face. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not easy. Being on your own, starting over, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But it's worth it. Because the life you build yourself, that's yours. Nobody can take it from you." Through the diner window, Marcus saw Emma stirring in the car. He needed to get her home. But he also needed to make sure Victoria would be okay. "Look," he said, pulling out his phone. "Let me give you my number. Not because I want anything from you, but because everyone needs at least one person they can call when things get hard. Someone who won't judge them or try to control them." Victoria took his phone with shaking hands and entered her number. Her phone might be dead, but she recited the digits from memory. When she handed it back, her eyes were clearer than they'd been all night. "Thank you, Marcus, really. You'll never know what this meant." He helped her call a cab to take her to the nearest bus station. Before she left, she grabbed his hand. "I'm going to Portland," she said firmly. "I'm going to email that gallery tomorrow. And I'm never going back to being someone I'm not." 3 months passed. Marcus had almost convinced himself that rainy night was a dream, that Victoria had been some kind of apparition conjured by exhaustion and bad weather. He and Emma had settled into their usual rhythm: work, school, bedtime stories, repeat. Then one Saturday afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up in front of their apartment building. Marcus watched from the window as Victoria stepped out, looking nothing like the broken woman from that night. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, happier, free. Emma answered the door at Victoria's knock, eyes wide. "Dad, there's a pretty lady here." Victoria laughed, and the sound was like sunlight. "Hi, Marcus." "Victoria." He couldn't quite believe it. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to thank you properly. And to tell you what happened." She glanced at Emma. "Can we talk?" Over coffee, Emma happily occupied with the sketchbook and fancy-colored pencils. Victoria told her story. The gallery had hired her. She'd found a small apartment in Portland. Her father had initially threatened legal action, tried to cut her off financially, but Victoria had stood firm. Eventually, he'd backed down, especially after she agreed to stay away from the family business. "Preston married someone else 2 months ago," she said with a laugh. "Another heiress." I actually feel sorry for her, but that wasn't why she'd come. Victoria pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "I know you said you didn't want money. And this isn't payment for helping me. This is an investment. In Emma's future." Inside was a check for $50,000, made out to a college fund in Emma's name. Before you say no, please understand, that money means nothing to me. I still have my trust fund and I barely touch it. But for Emma, it could mean everything. The choice to go to college without drowning in debt. The freedom to pursue her dreams. Marcus stared at the check, emotions warring inside him. Pride, gratitude, disbelief. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. You gave me something priceless that night, Marcus. You reminded me that kindness still exists, that not everyone has an angle. You literally saved my life. She reached across and squeezed his hand. Let me do this, please. Emma looked up from her drawing. Dad, can I show Victoria my picture? Of course, sweetheart. As Emma launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her artwork, a family portrait that included Mrs. Chen and their cat. Victoria caught Marcus's eye. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not romance exactly, but recognition. Two people who understood what it meant to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Okay, Marcus said softly, accepting the envelope. Thank you. This means more than you know. Victoria smiled. I know exactly what it means. That's why I had to do it. She stayed for dinner. Take-out pizza, that. Emma insisted they have because we're celebrating. Though celebrating what? The 7-year-old couldn't quite articulate. Maybe just the simple joy of new friendship, of unlikely connections forged in the darkness of a rainy night. As Victoria left that evening, she turned back one more time. You know, my father used to say that money reveals people's true character, that everyone has a price. She smiled. You proved him wrong. You reminded me that humanity isn't transactional. Sometimes people help simply because they can, because it's right. After she drove away, Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. I like her, Dad. She's nice. Yeah, she is, Marcus agreed. Watching the taillights disappear into the evening, he thought about the path his life had taken, the struggles, the sacrifices, the lonely nights wondering if he was doing right by his daughter. And he thought about Victoria, who'd had everything but nothing at all, who'd found the courage to start over. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she asked, Dad, why did you stop for that lady? When she was in the rain? Marcus smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Because someone once stopped for us when we needed help. And because that's what good people do. They help, even when it's inconvenient, even when they get nothing in return. But we did get something, Emma said wisely. We got a new friend. From the mouths of babes, Marcus kissed her forehead and turned out the light, grateful for the reminder that the richest life wasn't measured in bank accounts or social status. It was measured in moments of connection, in the courage to choose compassion over convenience, in the knowledge that you'd done the right thing simply because it was right. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe found a way to thank you for it.